So, guys, what really grinds my gears is how AEW treats Ring of Honor. And I'm actually planning on taking Hookie from work to go to the Philadelphia show. But there is definitely a big problem with that they only announced one match, which is Bandito versus Hechicero. And it's also bad because Hechicero usually loses on AEW. So you're ultimately like seeing like maybe a 20, 30 minute match of getting a result that we know what's going to happen, really. And I've not really liked how AEW has used ROH because definitely it can be like an NXT where they actually just work hard, they experiment, and they build up, talents for the AEW roster. And then also the other thing too is that, with Ring of Honor, you've hired people like Mark Briscoe and Dalton Castle and a few other people like Shane Taylor, where they actually can like contribute a lot to the AEW roster. Like honestly, when they purchase all those contracts, they really should have just said, "Hey, who do we have here that can actually be our next big stars?" Really. And I've also said really sadly about Athena, she's actually the longest reigning women's champion of the 21st century. But I believe it's Tori Wilson or another or Molly Holly or somebody else who gets that when that person's been champion for like 400 days, and Athena's been champion, and they're gonna make her be 1,000 days really. So I think that one thing that I'm concerned about is the next pay per view, which is Death Before Dishonor. And one of the bad things about it is Supercard of Honor. They worked very hard this year because with Supercard of Honor, they made it a big deal because they said, hey, if you pay AEW like $1,500 for really good seating at the All In Texas Stadium show, you get a free ticket. That's the only way you get in there. Without it, you can't get in there. So they're doing something like, they made it really good. You like get Takeshita versus Bandito, which is considered one of the greatest matches this year. You had Thunder Rosa versus Athena. Both wrestlers give a fuck, really. And you also had a lot of other matches. Like you also had 16 matches on that card, like 4 preliminaries, and then you had 12 matches. Like they really wanted you to feel like, what? Let's put it this way: that if you paid like a ticket's roughly like $500, good seating for all ins like maybe like 750 or something like that. So for like the Supercard Honor show, 14 matches, you're almost paying like maybe like around $200 or less for a match, really. And the fact that it ended with Bandito getting dollar bills thrown out of him because he did such a great job says something, because I've never seen that happen in a wrestling ring. So they acted like that's a big fucking deal, really. And they should ride that fucking momentum, really. But I don't think that they're going to do that. And it was actually very bad because originally they wanted Supercard of Honor to be in Atlantic City. And they wanted to do something like they wanted to say, hey, we're going to have nothing but pure matches for the women's pure championship. So if there's stipulations and all that, you probably would have seen like maybe 24 types of match stops, and then that's overkill. Why would I want to go to a show and watch a tournament for like a secondary title or a tertiary title or a tertiary title, and it's the same like match combination? That does not that does not that doesn't work for me, brother. Of course, saying for Hulk Hogan, even though I don't like Hulk Hogan. But the thing about it is that they really just don't give a fuck about Ring of Honor. And one of them is the pay-per-views. Because honestly, before, they've had really, really good pay-per-views for Ring of Honor. But now it seems like they're in the pattern of doing what they do best at AEW, is that when a pay-per-view comes up, that's when you're going to announce, all these like matches and all that. And the other bad thing about these pay-per-views is that it's disrespectful to the wrestlers, really. Because if you are on a wrestling show, you should like have pay-per-view matches where there's a story, there's a build, because every single time you're doing that, you're allowing wrestlers to practice and get better and better and to improve, really. Like for example, like Shane Taylor Promotions, they can do something like they can say something like, we want the trios title, why is Dustin the Von Erichs holding it? Why don't the Von Erichs and Sammy nut up or shut up? They do something like you have promos between Guevara and the Von Erichs holding the trios titles. they lose to Shane Taylor, and then Shane Taylor Promotions take the titles, and they just like either retire it by breaking it, or they just throw it in the trash and say we're going after the trios title because we've been in Ring of Honor too long, really. Or what would happen if you have Hechicero and Bandito, like they have promos with each other, or you say, hey, who is the next like 10 people on the AEW Ring of Honor roster that could be a big star and on AEW, really? Can we and really don't have anybody at this point. You have Bandito, but before you had Matt Cardona when he was there, and then you have Mark Briscoe, really. But can you find that next generation of superstars that can actually be somebody? Or can you take some people off your show who needs more work? Like, can you have Sammy Guevara try to become the ROH champion? Can you have Max Caster, Anthony Bowens? Can you have, Mystico or a few other people? Like, can you actually take some of your Ring of Honor people or some people who are not featured on AEW and you bring them over to Ring of Honor, like Josh Alexander or a few other people? And can you actually work on their skills, have them speak at the microphone more, and then they go back to AEW bigger and stronger, really? Could you do something where you say, hey, we're going to defend the ROH title on AEW television or pay-per-views, like a few times a year to show that it matters, really? So I really just think that they really struggled for a long time making these ROH pay-per-view matters. And I think that, as I said, one of the big things is really how they just have a lot of last-minute matches. And that's not good for anybody because, it just says that you're throwing things together. And then, again, it's like 2 weeks from now. So really, like I said, I really want to play hooky from work. I want to go down August 29, and I want to watch some ROH matches, and I want to do all that stuff. But why should I go down there? Why should I miss out on 24 hours of overtime because I work 12-hour shifts? Why should I miss out on all that if you're not going to give a fuck about your own show, really? That's not good for me. And then also, if you just throw things together at the last minute, it's like going to a restaurant and they give you the smorgasbord or the kitchen sink, which is a term for they throw crap together and they expect you to be happy with it when you're like, no, you didn't work at it. You just threw everything together. So, there's a reason why they're having that at the AEW at the 2,300 seat arena in Philadelphia. There's a reason why they're not having that at the Leah Kurr Center, which has maybe like 20,000, 16,000 people, really. There's a reason why I think they're doing like another show in Cleveland, like Death Before Dishonor, like a Final Battle, and there's a reason why I'm not sure which arena that they're going to. I'm sure that's not like a 3,000 or 4,000 seat arena, and that's not good, and that's embarrassing. So this lack of giving a shit about Ring of Honor really needs to stop. Really, the lack of making these pay-per-views matter is not good, really, and the lack of just saying, hey, you know what, there are people on our roster that can go to Ring of Honor and become bigger and better, like LFI. For example, they should go to Ring of Honor. They should really improve. You should have Roosh speak on the microphone a lot more and build his skills, really. You should have Anthony Bowens in Ring of Honor because clearly, as a single star, he's struggling. There's also many other wrestlers. Another thing that you're not doing is you're not having like these mega matches. Like, for example, you have MJF with the CMLL title. Why doesn't he challenge Bandito or Hechicero or Hologram or another wrestler that is usually, or Commander, who usually wrestles on Ring of Honor or the CMLL Championship? Do you think that in Philadelphia, where you want to sell this out and not rely on Athena and somebody else, or Hechicero and Bandito, do you really want to do something where you have MJF on the card to just draw more people into this? Or I think Wrestle Tatey talked to me and she said something like, "There's only 50 seats left." Do you want to create some disappointment, really? Do you actually just want to say, hey, we want to ride this ROH momentum. We really want to do great stuff. And I'm not sure if Takashita is going to be there because he's in the G1 or all that stuff, really. So there really has to be a sense of caring, really. Like imagine if you had MJF versus Hologram, or MJF versus Mystico, or MJF versus one of Mystico's best friends, like Masco Dorado, or somebody else, really. And then you get to Mystico versus MJF at Wrestle Dream or in Mexico, Or you have Takeshita go through a couple of matches and they say, okay, well, we're going to do a rematch at Final Battle and then they put the title on Takeshita. Then you spend some time with Bandito on the main roster, and he goes after the AEW championship. So like as I said, this whole thing with ROH, is just very, very unfortunate. There's a lot more that they could be doing, really. But one of the big issues is them not taking the pay-per-view seriously when they should.